There's some of us who understand this and some of us who never will. Movie aggregate score sites can be manipulated and are manipulated. And this is exactly what's happened with the Blue Beetle Rotten Tomatoes score. But Mick, how does it get manipulated? Well, it also gets manipulated over on the fan scorings, but it really nefariously gets manipulated on the verified critics section. And I'll explain to you how. Basically, it's what you say. A positive word in a review here, a negative word in a review here, and that's how you can get the scores up and down. Now, verified critics know exactly how to review a movie to get it a certain score. And it wouldn't surprise me if a lot of these verified critics are in cahoots what to make sure gets a high score and what gets a low score. So The Rock's Black Adam could not be allowed to succeed because WB, a section of WB Pictures, had already decided they wanted Gunn and they wanted Cavill out. And they knew what The Rock was doing. So that movie wasn't allowed to succeed. And The Rock's a Republican. Now, I am not a right-winger. If I was, I'd be proud of it. But there's no problem with The Rock being a Republican. You can support any political side you want. But we are in an industry now where left and right matters. Left means green and right means red. We know that. We know what they try to do with Sound of Freedom. Now, so they made sure that The Rock's Black Adam failed with its Rotten Tomatoes score. They gave a brilliant movie with great production values. This is the truth. It's, in terms of a movie, it's a solid movie, it's action-packed, the VFX is the best VFX I've seen for a very long time in a CBM. The story is tight, you've got Aldis Hodges Hawkman, you've got Pierce Brosnan as Dr. Fate. They are the best things about the movie. The whole cast is amazing. I think that Sarah Sahi gives a brilliant performance, and I think the whole themes of, aggressing countries invading other little countries was great, the inclusion and representation, but they made sure that movie tanked. That movie wasn't allowed to succeed. And verified critics get their orders from studios and other people with power. So verified critics know how to make sure a movie gets a high score and a low score. And this is what's happened with Blue Beetle. Because it's a Latino-led inclusive movie, it wasn't allowed to fail with its Rotten Tomatoes score. So they all made sure, they all got their little extremist heads together and made sure that Blue Beetle landed at around 88% with verified critics scores. You can't tell me they weren't lying in their early initial reactions and their reviews. Well, I can tell you they were lying because I saw the movie. I did a mini non-spoiler review the other day. Check it out here on my YouTube. And I was very honest about the movie. I spoke passionately how they tried to turn the name Cord into a Latino name, knowing full well that, Ted Cord is an iconic straight white male Blue Beetle who basically they took the word Cord, yes, and we have a Jenny Cord who's played by a Latino actor playing a Latino character. All of a sudden, the name Cord is Latino, right? So their rewriting of history is all there. But anyway, this film had to look like it succeeded. As I've said before, James Gunn was only brought in as co-CEO, using the terms loosely, of DC Studios to be an influencer, to influence the movies and the comics. Now, influencing the DCEU movies, he's failed at. They've flopped. Blue Beetle looks like it's going to flop. How hard it flops will be very, very interesting. They've really tried to push this movie. I don't think it's going to work. How James Gunn has worked as an influencer is taking a lot of comic books to #1 of the bestseller lists at Amazon. But comics don't have a great profitability. Comics are there because it's a tradition. They've always been there. They're the ones who created the superhero genre, and it's right that we encourage young people to read comics, but there's not a great profitability in comics. James Gunn has failed to do what he was asked to do. Influence the remaining DCEU movies and make sure they made a profit. It hasn't worked. In fact, the movie they hated, from the guy they hated, The Rock's Black Adam, is the only one that finished in profit. The rest have been flops. James Gunn, as an influencer, simply hasn't worked. And why is James Gunn bragging about these Amazon #1, comics? Because he's trying to tell Zaslav when it comes to his review of his performance, look, boss, I'm getting those comics up there. But Zaslav doesn't give a shit about comics. He gives a shit about movies making money. And as the head of the studio, he's charged with making the shareholders money. Because if he doesn't, he will be out of a job and his position will be untenable. So Zaslav, who I've done my research on, doesn't suffer fools gladly, and he's a micromanager, as we've already seen. So basically, going back to this whole Rotten Tomatoes score, Rotten Tomatoes isn't fit for purpose. It is corrupt, and as I say, the official critic score, the verified critic scores, are manipulated. Look what they did to Joker, because it offended their extremist sensibilities. They tried to give it as low a score as they could. They did it to BVS, they did it to Man of Steel. Those were great movies. In no reality, whether you like BVS or MOS or hate it, should those films have finished with rotten scores. And that's how corrupt it is. They know exactly what to say in their reviews to make sure they either succeed or tank in the verified critic scores. And as I say, Rotten Tomatoes isn't fit for purpose. It shouldn't exist as an official entity for critics to go on. It's time for aggregate scores to not be the norm as part of the marketing push. That shouldn't happen. If you want to review a movie, right, we've always had critics. There should be a few critics, 10, 15, 20 critics, reviewing movies to service the consumer so they have an idea what to watch and what not to watch, right? But it shouldn't be totally opinionated, and so biased. These people are biased, and if they don't like a filmmaker, if they don't like an actor, they'll vote down the movie. And that's why I'm talking about Rotten Tomatoes. Innocent people are going on there and looking the scores and saying, I'm not going to see this movie. So it'd be interesting when they see the 88%, verified critic score for Blue Beetle, will this get them to see the movie? I don't think that it will. I think a lot of the mainstream moviegoers now understand that Rotten Tomatoes isn't a good place to find advice on what to see and what not to see. It is very corrupt, and a lot of us know that now. And like everything else in the world we now live in, it's extremely political. Well, I'm not extremely political. I just want to enjoy my entertainment. I don't want my fellow fans, not my fans, but fans of movies and TV and geeks to keep on being sucked in to this political game. And because I've seen Blue Beetle, I can tell you that the reviews, the positive reviews for Blue Beetle, are blatant lies. And not one of them spoke about the story. There's a reason for that, because there isn't much of a story. This movie is full of lame gags, and basically we're forced to follow a very, very boring family. Nobody is going to watch a Blue Beetle movie for family. We're going to watch Jamie Reyes become Blue Beetle. Nobody cares about the Reyes fucking family. Now, in the first Shazam movie, we kind of got into the Shazam family and it was okay. But the point is, we weren't forced with that whole family for the whole movie. The point is, it was the two boys the movie focused on, and they developed a relationship between those two characters, and that's why it worked. But we're being forced to follow a bunch of characters from one family that nobody cares about. So the official reviews are lies just to keep the scores up. You are being manipulated. These scores are being manipulated because guess what? A conglomerate of huge corporate studios own Rotten Tomatoes. How can that be a thing? How can that be allowed? As I said the other day, we need the White House, we need the government to create an independent body to keep Hollywood honest. Because right now, they are not honest. They've never been honest, but now it's affecting the quality of movies. Hopefully, Blue Beetle is one of the last of these extremist movies. But personally, I'm not motivated to go to cinema, even if it was my culture, to watch a boring family with boring gags. Yes, the physical suit, the Blue Beetle suit, was stunning. It was great. It was well directed, but it's just not a memorable movie. It's yet another DCEU movie which is neither great or good. It's just there. And that's why it won't make any money. And we've got this whole conversation still about whether, what is Blue Beetle, the first DC Universe movie or the first DC Universe character. It's not a DC Universe movie. He's the first DC Universe character. And even worse, we're hearing now that this movie that's going to fail is going to play a big part in the new DC Universe. Let me tell you something. James Gunn hasn't got a skeleton of a plan, and he's making it up as he goes along. They're only focusing on Creature Commandos and Superman Legacy right now, and Waller's going to come as well. They don't have a proper plan. So when you hear him say, oh yeah, Blue Beetle and Zolo is going to be a big part of my future, he's just saying things. The Wonder Woman thing is very, very revealing that it proves he doesn't even have a big plan for Wonder Woman. But make no mistake, anything could happen with Blue Beetle. And even though right now in the marketing they're saying Zolo and the family have got a big future, you shouldn't believe a word that escapes these people's lips. Because if they were making good movies, they wouldn't have to lie for fun about their movies. They wouldn't have to make sure that critics lied about movies for higher aggregate scores. If they made great movies without extremism and this fake representation and inclusion, right? Because if you make good movies and you cast the right people, the most talented people, you're going to get Latinos, you're going to get Asians, you're going to get Indians, you're going to get a multitude of people, and you're automatically being inclusive. But this, people are fed up of. Basically, lame mid-movies that they have to create an aggregate score and lie about it. Rotten Tomatoes is a stacked deck. And as I say, these critics know exactly how to give a movie a high score or a low score. And it's time for you and me to start not going on Rotten Tomatoes and not going to the cinema if we're being given a bunch of turds. This is what has to happen, everyone, because if it doesn't happen, this system will carry on. I have been disgusted in my Twitter feed seeing the lies spoken about Blue Beetle. It is not an outstanding movie. It is nothing special. It's neither great, bad, or indifferent.